Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. In today's video, we're going to check out RamNode, a VPS provider that's built on OpenStack. And you can use RamNode to quickly spin up Linux instances, which are perfect for hosting services for your business, running applications within your Homelab, or even for building lab servers that you could use while you go through the tutorials on this channel. RamNode also offers a solid set of VPS features. You could create snapshots before making major changes, set up load balancers for horizontal scaling, and even upload your own custom images. If you prefer to automate things, RamNode works great with tools like Ansible and Terraform, and there's also a full API if you'd rather manage everything from the command line. And although the platform runs on OpenStack under the hood, RamNode provides a custom dashboard that makes everything easy to use. No OpenStack knowledge required. And in this tutorial, I'm going to give you a full walkthrough of RamNode. I'll show you the process of building an Ubuntu instance on the platform, and then after that, I'll show off the Cloud Control Panel. So if you wanted a video that'll get you up to speed on RamNode, then this is the video for you. But before we dive in, I wanted to mention that this video is being sponsored by RamNode. As always, I maintain full creative control over the content on this channel, and this video is no exception. But I chose to partner with RamNode because I was genuinely interested in trying it out, especially since I've been exploring alternatives ever since Akamai acquired Linode. I'll share my thoughts and opinions on RamNode in an upcoming review, but this video is strictly a tutorial and not a review, so we're going to focus on how to use the platform. And with that out of the way, it's time to get started. What I'll do in the next section is talk a little bit more about what RamNode is, and then after that, we'll build our first Ubuntu instance on the platform. After we finish with that, I'll give you a tour of the Cloud Control Panel, and it's going to be a ton of fun. So let's dive in right now. Let's start by taking a closer look at what RamNode actually is. As you probably already know, RamNode is a VPS provider that gives you the ability to deploy Linux-based cloud servers. And unlike some providers that try to do everything at once and upsell you along the way, RamNode sticks closely to the Unix philosophy of do one thing and do it well. Their focus is squarely on VPS hosting and the core services that surround it. Because of that focus, you won't find some of the extras you might see with larger cloud platforms, such as managed Kubernetes clusters or built-in CDNs. RamNode is best suited for users who are technically inclined and want solid performance, straightforward management, and none of the extra bloat that sometimes comes with bigger cloud ecosystems. And even though RamNode doesn't provide managed container services, nothing stops you from deploying your own container environment on top of their servers. In fact, if you visit the RamNode website and then go to the deployment guide section, you'll find guides for just about anything you might want to deploy on the platform. For example, they have a guide for Jellyfin, WordPress, Coolify, Uptime Kuma, MariaDB, as well as guides for deploying a Kubernetes cluster and even deploying Portainer. So chances are, if you want to deploy something on their platform, they probably have a guide for it. It's also worth noting that RamNode is a smaller company rather than a massive corporation. That matters because with larger providers, it's easy to feel like you're just another number. Many users appreciate working with a focused company rather than one that seems intent on taking over the world. Again, very much in line with the Unix philosophy that I mentioned earlier. But even though RamNode is focused primarily on VPS services, there's a number of noteworthy features on the platform you could take advantage of. For example, you can set up object storage, block storage, floating IPs, load balancers, and more. There's also both standard and premium instance types available, which will help you choose the right resources for your project. Behind the scenes, RamNode runs on OpenStack, which is a powerful technology for building private and public clouds. OpenStack is one of my personal favorite platforms, but it can be fairly complex to learn and deploy. But RamNode removes that complexity entirely. Instead of exposing you directly to the traditional OpenStack interface, they provide a custom cloud control panel that lets you perform almost anything with just a few clicks. When it comes to creating servers, RamNode supports a variety of popular Linux distributions, including but not limited to Ubuntu, Debian, Alma Linux, and more. However, you're not limited to their catalog. You can also upload your own custom images if you prefer to run a distro that isn't offered by default. And additional features include software-defined networking, security groups, as well as useful cloud-native tools. And one of RamNode's biggest advantages is cost. Their pricing is lower than many competitors, and they also offer hourly billing. And that means if you only need a server for a short-term task, such as following along with one of my tutorials, you're only charged for the time you actually use the instance, not for an entire month. To get started, you'll first need to create an account on ramnode.com and add some credit to it. Once you do that, you can begin provisioning servers right away. In the next section, what I'll do is walk you through the account creation process, and then after that, we'll deploy our first Linux instance. So let's get started. At this point, what I'm going to do is show you the process of creating your account on RamNode. All you have to do is visit ramnode.com, and right here at the top, you'll see a button for signing up. So I'll click on it, and then we'll create our account. All we have to do is just fill out the details that we have right here. So I'll start filling it out. We'll type our first and last name, and then we'll type an email address for the account. We'll also type a password as well. And just a few more fields to fill out here. We'll select our country, and then we'll click the button down here to continue. At this point, we'll need to add some credit to our account in order to begin using it. And if you click the RamNode icon down here, you'll be able to enter a coupon code. So what I'm going to do is enter the coupon code that's associated with this particular video. If you use this code, you'll be helping to support the channel, and that'd be very helpful. And the code is simply going to be Learn Linux TV. So we'll add some credit to our account, and the coupon code will give us some additional credit. To keep things simple, I'll just click the $10 option right here. I'll check this box. And then to create the account, I'll click this button. Once you do that, your account is now created, and then all you have to do is finalize adding credit to your account to start using it. So basically, you just check this box right here, and then click the Pay Now button. I'll fill out this information off camera, but I think you get the idea. I'll leave it up to you to finish adding the details on your end, but what we'll do in the next section is start taking a look at RamNode. And specifically what we'll do is create our first instance. It's going to be a ton of fun, so once you have your account set up, I'll meet you over in that section. So let's get started. In this section, we're going to walk through the entire process of creating a VPS instance on RamNode. We'll spin up our very own Ubuntu server in this section, and after that, we'll take a closer look at the dashboard and the various options that are available to us. So the first thing we'll do is log into our account if we're not logged in already. So I'll click the login button right here. I'll type in my email address, and then I'll paste in my password. And we'll log in. And now I'm logged in. And when you first sign into your RamNode account, you'll land in the client area. You could think of this as the home page for your overall account. It shows your active services, billing information, and links to helpful resources such as the knowledge base and the Discord community. However, building actual servers happens somewhere else. From the client area, you'll notice several links that take you to the Cloud Control Panel. And we can see that right here. So all we have to do is click on that. And here we have the Cloud Control Panel. So let's create our first instance. What we'll do is expand Cloud right here, and then we'll click on Instances. And this page will list all of the servers that are associated with our account. But since we haven't created any yet, the page is going to be empty. So to start building our first instance, what we'll do is click on the plus icon on the lower right-hand corner. At this point, the interface will now ask a handful of questions about the instance that we want to create, and the process is pretty straightforward. The first thing we'll do is give our instance a name, and I'm just going to call mine Ubuntu Test. And then after that, what we'll do is choose the region where our instance will be deployed. And at the time of the recording, there's 5 regions available. And each of these are different data centers, and basically what you do is choose one that's closer to you geographically. On my end, I'm going to choose EWR, but you could choose whichever one makes the most sense for your use case. Continuing, the next thing we'll do is choose a flavor for our instance. And the flavor determines the amount of RAM and CPU resources your instance will have. And each of the flavors are going to be separated into categories. For example, we have Standard VPS, Storage VPS, Light VPS, Premium, and VDS as well. So what we'll do is first choose the category for our instance, and to help you along, I'll give you a quick description of each. Starting from the left, we have Standard VPS. And these are general purpose instances that are designed for lighter workloads. And these are ideal for basic services, testing migrations, learning Linux, or to use as a lab server while you go through a tutorial like this one. If you don't have a preference, then standard instances are probably what you're looking for. Next, we have storage VPS. And these are optimized for storage-heavy workloads rather than CPU power. And these are a great fit for applications that perform a lot of disk I/O, such as file servers or media streaming applications. We also have light VPS instances as well, and similar to standard VPS instances, these are also designed for lighter workloads. As you can see, the specs are lower, but also the cost is lower as well. So if you need a quick demo server, for example, you might consider an option from the light VPS category. Also, we have premium instances as well, and these will have faster compute and storage, and they're excellent for services that expect more traffic or benefit from quicker response times. Finally, we also have VDS instances, and these are going to be top tier. These instances will behave more like dedicated servers, offering the best performance and the least resource contention. They're well suited for production workloads or high-demand company services. And each category includes multiple resource tiers, and the monthly price is listed underneath each tile. All you have to do is choose the category that best fits your use case, and then you pick the specific flavor that you want. For this particular tutorial, what I'm going to do is create a standard VPS instance, and I'll select the 4GB flavor. And this is going to give me some extra breathing room, although you can choose a smaller instance if you're following along with me. Anyway, now that I've selected the flavor that I want, the next thing we'll do is choose the boot source. And this refers to the operating system image. RamNode offers a selection of popular Linux distros, including Ubuntu, Debian, Alma Linux OS, and others. I'm going to choose Ubuntu 2404 in my case, but you could choose whichever one makes the most sense for you. Anyway, I'll click Select to confirm my choice. And the next thing we're going to do is choose a network for our instance. So if I drop this down, we'll see that I have a number of options, and what I'm going to do is choose the IPv4 public option. Now optionally, if you don't want a publicly available instance, you can choose to deploy it in a private network. Now we haven't created any extra networks yet, but if you plan on hosting private workloads, you can create and use private networks later. Continuing, we also have a selection for SSH keys. Now we haven't created an SSH key as part of this tutorial just yet, but it is an option and it is recommended. SSH access is secure and is pretty much the industry standard when it comes to remote access. If you wanted to create a key, you could click right here to create one, but you don't have to create a new instance just to have the ability to create a key. We can also do that from the menu right here on the left. I'm not going to create an SSH key just yet. This is just a demo, so I just wanted you to know that the option is available. Continuing, what I'm going to do is type a password for the root user for this instance. And then finally, we could choose the number of instances that we want to create. By default, you could create up to 3 instances on your account, but if you need to create more, you can always contact support and get that limit increased. Either way, if you wanted to create more than one instance, you could change the number right here, but for right now, I'm going to create one instance, so I'll click Create, and the process will begin. So now my instance is being deployed, so I'm just going to wait for this to finish. It should only take a few minutes, and then I'll be right back. And our instance has been created. At this point, we can access our instance and begin configuring it. And there's 2 ways we can go about that. The first method when it comes to accessing your server is by using the built-in console. So I'll click on the instance, and then what I'll do is click the 3 dots right here, and I can see the console option, so I'll give it a click. And here we have the console. So to log into our instance, we could use the username root, and then we type the password that we created during the setup process. And as you can see, I'm connected. At this point, I could begin configuring my instance, installing packages, building config files, or whatever I need to do. Another option is to use SSH for connecting to your instance. So if you have a preferred SSH client, you could use that to connect to your instance as well. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'll switch over to a terminal and I'll use SSH to access my new VPS instance. And when we click on the instance, we can see the IP address for it. So what I'll do is just highlight it and copy it. Then I'll switch over to a terminal. and then I'll type SSH. I'll use the username root, and then I'll paste in the IP address. And there we go. So I'll press enter. I'll type yes to confirm, and then I'll type in the password. And as you can see, I'm now connected to the instance via SSH. And as a reminder, securing SSH should always be one of the first things that you do on a new server. I do have a separate video that's dedicated to the topic of all the things that you should do when you first deploy a new Linux server, so what I'll do is leave a card for that video right about here. But if nothing else, make sure that you secure SSH, that's very important. Anyway, to have a little bit of fun, what I'm going to do is install Apache on this instance. So first what I'll do is type apt update, and that'll refresh the repository index. And now what I'll do is install Apache. To do that, I'll type apt install, and the package name is going to be Apache 2. I'll press enter. And now it's showing me that it's going to be installing Apache as well as a number of dependencies. I can confirm the default OY by simply pressing enter. And now Apache is installed. The next thing I'm going to do is switch over to a web browser. I'll open up a new tab. I just want to make sure that everything is working. So what I'll do is paste in the IP address for the instance right here in the address bar. I'll press enter, and check it out. We have the default start page for Apache 2, which confirms that it's working. And it also confirms that this instance is available publicly. Again, any public instance needs to be secured. I mentioned a video earlier that's already on my channel that'll walk you through the beginning steps when it comes to that. But for right now, we have a fully working instance. I was able to install Apache, and now I'm able to access Apache from within my web browser. But anyway, now that you've seen the process of creating a VPS instance on RamNode, what I'm going to do in the next section is go over the Cloud Control Panel in more detail, so that way you'll have a better idea how to navigate it. At this point, let's take a tour of the Cloud Control Panel. We'll begin with the settings that are related to VPS instances, since that's where we left off. And understanding this section will make it much easier to manage the servers that you create going forward. So when you click on the Instances section, you'll see a list of all the VPS instances that are associated with your account. As I covered earlier, you could create a new instance by clicking the plus icon right here. But we already have an instance. This is the one that we created in the previous section, so let's take a look at it. When you click on an instance, you'll see this settings screen right here, and all of the options within this section are separated into categories. We start off with the Info tab, as you can see, and it'll give you some information about your instance. For example, the distribution that you have installed, the flavor, memory, and so on. You could also see other details, such as the UUID, the date that the instance was created, when it was last stopped, and so on. So basically, this tab gives you general information about your instance. Moving on, we also have the Networking tab. In here, you'll have options that are related to networking, such as adding a port, adding an IP address, and even assigning a floating IP. We see a number of options down here for those settings, and we also see the IP address that is assigned to the instance right now. I'll talk more about ports and IP addresses later, so for now, let's move on to the System Log tab. It's pretty straightforward. If your instance is having issues and you need to troubleshoot it, you can find some information right here that'll serve as a good starting point. Right now, we're seeing information that pertains to Cloud Init, which is something that kicks off during the instance creation process. And the Metrics tab is going to be especially useful. In here, you can monitor resource usage over time. In the upper left-hand corner, you can choose which metric you want to view. So right now, we're viewing network metrics. So if I wanted to view CPU metrics, I could click on this right here, and that'll update the graph accordingly. By default, it's going to show us metrics over the last hour, but we can also choose time periods of 24 hours, 7 days, and 30 days as well. The Network Traffic tab is also useful, and this will help you keep an eye on your bandwidth usage. And there's not going to be all that much to show for my instance as I just created it, but as your instance ages, you'll see all of the information pertaining to traffic right here. And that'll definitely help you keep an eye on bandwidth, which is really important. Anyway, continuing, we also have a tab for snapshots. And this is one you'll definitely want to take advantage of. If you're already familiar with the concept of snapshots when it comes to instances, especially if you've worked with other cloud platforms or hypervisors, it's the same idea here. And it's a great safety net. For example, before installing system updates or making major configuration changes, you could take a snapshot first. Then, if the update breaks something or your changes don't go as planned, you can simply restore the snapshot and instantly undo the damage. In fact, what I'll do right now is show you the process. I'll create a snapshot of this instance. All I have to do is click this button right here. I'll just give it a simple name. I'll call it maintenance. And I'll create it. And in my case, a snapshot is created. And to show you the concept, what I'll do is switch over to a terminal. And what I'll do is make a change to the server. And one thing I noticed earlier is that there's a bunch of updates available. As you can see right here, there's 243 packages that can be upgraded. So what I'm going to do is install all of the updates right now. And to do that, I'll run apt and then dist-upgrade. I'll install all of the updates. And I'll accept the default for this option right here, since this is just a demo, and I don't have any configuration in my SSHD config file anyway. So I'll just press enter. And now the instance is updated. And to confirm, I'll refresh it again. And as you can see, I'm fully updated. Now what I'll do is demonstrate the process of restoring a snapshot. So I'll switch back to the browser. And here we have the snapshot. So what I'll do is restore it. I'll rebuild the current instance from the snapshot. So for the boot source, I'll just click Change. I'll choose my maintenance snapshot. I'll type in the root password that I want the instance to have, since it will be rebuilt from the snapshot. Just want to make sure that it's correct. And then I'll click Rebuild. At this point, I'll give it a few minutes for the rebuilding process to finish. And now the process of restoring the snapshot is complete. What I'll do right now is go back to my terminal. And I'll reconnect to the instance. I'll type in my super secret password. And now I'm connected. Now if I refresh the package index again, you'll see that I have 243 packages that can be upgraded. So basically, I created this snapshot before I installed updates, then I installed them, and then after that, I restored the snapshot. As you can see here, it restored the instance state from before I installed those updates. So it appears that snapshots are working. Continuing, let's take a quick look at the Volumes tab. And this will give you access to attach a block storage device to your instance. Now if we go back to the main tab here, the Info tab, we'll see that we have local storage associated with the instance, but we can have additional storage added as well, and that's what Volumes enables you to do. You can attach a volume if you've already created one, but we haven't created one as of yet. But basically what you'll do is create a volume, give it a size, and then attach it to the instance. And volumes actually exist independently of your VPS instance. You can only have it attached to one at a time, but you can always detach it from an instance and attach it to another one. And that can make it really easy to migrate data between instances or even performing a lift and shift. If you keep all of your important data in a secondary volume, and then the main volume is used primarily for your operating system, that gives you the most flexibility. Moving along, we have the history log. So this tab is actually very useful if you want a bit of history when it comes to your server. You can see all of the important events right here, so that's very useful. So we see when it was created. We also see when the snapshot was created. And then finally, we see when I rebuilt the instance. Next, there's the Security Groups tab. Security groups function like a built-in firewall, letting you explicitly allow or deny traffic on specific ports. By default, everything is open, which is why all inbound and outbound addresses shows all zeros. As you continue using the platform, security groups are something you'll definitely want to configure to tighten up the security of your VPS. I'll cover these in detail in a future video, but for right now, what I'll do is give you a quick example. So we'll take a quick detour to the Security Groups tab. And what I'll do is create a new one. And when we create a security group, it's important that we create it in the same region where our instance resides. I created mine in EWR, so I'll select that one. And then next we'll give it a name. I'm going to call mine web server. And then optionally you can add a description if you want to, but I'll create this particular security group. And here it is. Now to configure a security group, all you have to do is click on it. And right now it's allowing all egress traffic, which is great, but we want to configure this even further to restrict access. And as an example use case, what I'm going to do is restrict access to SSH, but I'm going to allow access to Apache from anywhere. So what I'll do is click right here to add a new rule. I'm going to drop down the protocol. I'm going to find SSH in the list. And here it is. And for the description, I'm just going to give it a quick one. So I want to allow access to SSH from my studio IP. And this is going to be for incoming traffic. And then what I'll do is paste in my public IP address right here. And I'll add /32 because I want this rule to apply to just this IP address right here. And then I'll add the rule. So now I'm allowing access via SSH, as you can see right here, to my home IP. And the next thing I'll do is add a rule for Apache. So I'll click right here to add a new rule. For protocol, I'll choose HTTP. And then for the description, I'm going to be allowing public access. And I'm going to leave the IP address as all zeros right here because I want to allow traffic from anywhere. So I'll add the rule. And now our security group is complete. But a security group isn't useful until we attach it to an instance, so I'll click on the Instances tab. I'll go back into the instance that we created earlier. And then in the Security Groups tab, I can associate the security group that we just created to this instance. I'm going to first remove the security group that's here right now. And now that it's gone, I'll associate the new security group. So I'll drop this down, I'll choose the one that I just created, and then I'll associate it. And as you can see, we have the security group attached to this instance, and it's ready to go. And just to make sure that it's still working, what I'll do is open up a new tab. I'll paste in the IP address for the instance, and then I'll press enter. As you can see, Apache is working. And the cool thing about this is that when you have a security group such as this one, you can limit access to SSH from your home IP address or your office IP address, so that way the general public won't have access to it. But if your server is intended to serve web traffic, then you do want that publicly available, so I made a rule right here that's going to allow traffic to Apache. If you decide to secure your instance with HTTPS, for example, if you install a certificate, you'll want to allow port 443 as well. But since I don't have a certificate on this server, port 80 is fine for me. But anyway, I just showed you a quick example of security groups. It's a very useful feature. Continuing, we also have the Backups tab. And here you could create a full backup of your instance, and you could even automate that process by setting up a recurring schedule. Snapshots, which we looked at earlier, are great for short-term protection, especially when you're making immediate changes. Backups, on the other hand, are designed for long-term disaster recovery. On this tab, you could choose to create a backup manually or set up a scheduled backup routine. If your VPS is running something important, I highly recommend that you enable automated backups. So, for example, what I could do is create a new backup schedule. I'll just name mine Daily Schedule. I'll leave the time as is, although you can customize that. And for rotation, it's going to give me the ability to configure how many backups I want to keep. So maybe I want to keep the last 3 backups, for example. I think that's fair. And to create the schedule, what I'll do is click Create Backup Schedule. And now from this point forward, the instance will be backed up automatically. But you don't have to wait for the schedule to kick off in order to create a backup. You can also do that manually. And you can do that by clicking Create New Backup right here. I'll just call it Web Server Backup, and I'll create it. So again, this is very similar to the concept of snapshots. However, snapshots are intended for short-term operations, while backups are something that you might want to keep around for a longer amount of time. Anyway, we see my web server backup right here, and we also see that I've configured a backup schedule. So far, so good. And as you can see, the backup is finished. So I'll click on it, and here we have details about the backup itself. And now that we have a backup, we can launch a new instance from the backup. We could do that by clicking Launch Image right here. We can also edit the image, and we can even download it. But if we want to launch an image, we just click right here. And this will give us an opportunity to create a new instance from the image. And if we want to do that, the process will play out similarly to creating a brand new instance. You see right here that the boot source has been changed to the backup that I created. But other than that, the rest of the options are the same as when we first created the instance. You'll give it a name, choose the flavor, and also choose a root password as well as a network. Anyway, at this point, we explored all of the options that pertain to instances, and what we'll do in the next section is explore more of the Cloud Control Panel. In this section, I'll give you a general tour of the Cloud Control Panel. Earlier, we focused on instance-related settings, but now we're going to look at what else you could do inside the dashboard. And picking up from where we left off, the next stop is the Networks tab. So I'll click on that. And here we can see any networks that you might have created. When we created our Ubuntu instance earlier, I mentioned that RamNode provides a default public network, and any instance that's attached to it is fully reachable from the internet. I also mentioned that you could create additional networks, and this is where you go to do that. Now, a full overview of RamNode's networking features is beyond the scope of this video, and I'll cover it more deeply in a future video, but what I'll do right now is create a quick network just to show you what it looks like. So I'll click the plus icon to do that. I'll just name mine Demo Network. I'm going to create it within the same region that my instance resides in, which is EWR. You can also apply a DNS domain name if you have one, but I don't have one associated with my account just yet, so I'll click Create to create this network. And here we see the demo network. We can also see all the relevant details when we click on it. And now that we've created a new network, we'll need to create a subnet as well. So what I'll do is click on this icon right here to add a subnet. I'll call mine Demo Subnet. So I'll use this IP scheme right here, just something simple. And then I'll scroll down and add the subnet. And now we've created a new network within our RamNode account. And continuing, we also have the Ports tab, which is also related to networking. Ports are essentially virtual network interfaces, and every VPS starts with one by default, but you can create additional ports here and then attach them to your servers. Now, for a quick example, what I'll do right now is create a port. And to do that, I'll click on the plus icon right here. Then for the name, I'll just call it Demo Port. Next, I'll select a network. And I'll select the demo network that we created earlier. I'm going to attach it to a subnet. We did create one after all. And for the rest of these options, I'll leave them at their defaults. I just want to show you what this process looks like, so I'll click Create. And as you can see, I now have a brand new port that I can use for my instances. We could also click on it to view some information pertaining to the port, but what I'm going to do right now is attach this port to an instance. So I'll click on Instances. I'll click on the one that we created earlier. Then I'll go to the Networking tab. And what I'll do is attach a port. I'll attach the demo port. It's the only other port that I have anyway, and then I'll attach it. And as you can see right here, we have an IP address that's associated with the subnet and the network that we created earlier. Again, a deep dive into RamNode's networking features is beyond the scope of this video, but I wanted to show you the basic idea. Moving on, what we'll do is go to the Zones section. And this allows you to create DNS zones. Once you create a zone, you can add common DNS records such as an A record, CNAMEs, and more. Right here, I have one that I created off camera, so if I click on it, you'll see the DNS records that are associated with the zone. As you can see, we have an A record, we have some CNAME records, and so on. Now, if you're already familiar with the concept of DNS and DNS records, then this probably looks very familiar to you. If you attach a domain to your account, and then you create a zone for it, you now have your very own DNS server, and you can create records accordingly. So you could create a new DNS record by clicking on the plus icon. And for that, you'll choose a type. You have several options here, a time to live, and also a subdomain. I'll leave it up to you to configure DNS, but if that's something that you need to do, you'll do so in the zone section. Continuing, we already looked at security groups, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a great way to control access to your servers. The one that we created is this one right here, and what I wanted to do was allow access publicly to port 80 for Apache, but also I wanted to only allow access to SSH from my home IP. And that's a very common use case. You might want to allow public access to a specific port, but also restrict it otherwise, and that's exactly what I did right here. I will cover security groups in more detail in a follow-up video, but for right now, I think you understand the basic idea. Moving on, we'll click on Floating IPs. A floating IP is similar to a port in the sense that it can be attached to any VPS instance, but floating IPs are specifically publicly routable IP addresses. One major benefit is that you can assign a DNS record to point to a floating IP address, and then you can move that IP from one instance to another to have that IP transferred instantly. That way, if you ever replace a server or scale your environment, you won't have to wait for a DNS propagation. You can simply reassign the floating IP to a new instance and keep everything online seamlessly. In fact, what I'll do right now is create a floating IP. So I'll click on this icon right here to create one. I'll create it in the same region where my instance is. For the network, I'm going to choose IPv4 public. I'll leave the description blank, and then I'll click Create. And here we have a floating IP address. If we want to attach it to an instance, we'll go to the Instances section. We'll click on an instance. We'll go to the Networking tab. And then right here, we'll assign a floating IP. We'll click on this one right here. And for ports, what I'll do is choose the existing public address. And then all I have to do is click on Associate IP to attach it to the instance. I'm just going to leave my instance as is for now, but I wanted to show you the basic operation. Continuing, we also have a section for SSH keys as well. I did mention this earlier, and what you can do right here is create a new SSH key. So I'll just give mine a name, and if you already have a key, you could paste your public key right here, or you could generate a new one, which is what I'm going to do. So I'll click on Generate New Key, and it's giving me my public key and my private key. Now normally you don't want to show your private key to anyone, and you certainly don't want to show it in a video that other people are watching. In my case, this is just a demo, and I'm not actually going to use this SSH key for anything important. I just wanted you to see what it looks like. But anyway, now we've generated a key, and what I'll do now is save it. Once the key's been created, one way you can use it is by going to the Instances tab. If you're creating a new instance, and scroll down, you'll see that your SSH key is listed among the choices. And this is a great thing to do because SSH is definitely a more secure means of access. So you'll definitely want to create an SSH key if you don't already have one. If I was to check this box right here to select this key, and then I go through the process of creating this instance, then this instance will accept connections via SSH with that key. It's literally that simple. Now I'm going to cancel creating this instance right here. I just wanted to show you where you go to configure your key. What we're going to do right now is go to the volume section. A volume is essentially a virtual hard drive that exists independently of any individual VPS instance. Every VPS instance that you create will start with its own root volume, but you can also attach additional block storage volumes whenever you need more storage. Think of it just like installing another physical disk in a server. Once it's attached, you could format it, mount it, and then store data on it. One of the best use cases for additional volumes is to keep important data separate from the main system disk. That way, if you ever decide to rebuild or replace your VPS, You can simply detach the volume from the old instance and then attach it to the new one without losing anything. Volumes also make it really easy to move data between servers. All you have to do is attach the disk, copy your data over, then reattach it to a different instance. And to show you the process, what I'll do is create a new volume. I'll just name mine App Storage. I'm going to choose to create a new empty volume. And for the size, I'm going to give it a modest 25 gigabytes. I think that should be fine enough for this particular example. And for the volume type, we could choose default or NVMe. You could choose NVMe if you want to benefit from better performance, which is what I'm going to do. And then I'll click Create. And now the volume is being created. And it's already available. So now that we've created that volume, we could attach it to an instance. So all I have to do is click on the instance that I want to attach it to. And then we'll click on Volumes. And we'll attach a volume. And here's the one that I've just created, so I'll attach it. And now the volume is being attached. And we can see that it's already done. It shows me the size, it shows me the name, so far so good. And now that we've attached the volume, I'll switch over to a terminal. And then I'll run lsblk. That'll show me all the block storage devices that are attached to my server. And we can see that we have VDB there on the bottom. It shows 25 gigabytes, which is correct, but there's no partitions on that volume as of yet. So what I'll do is create one. I'll type fdisk, and then /dev, and then /vdb. Basically the same device identifier that showed with the previous command. And then here in the fdisk console, we'll print the current partition layout, but we don't have one. So what I'll do is create a new one. I'm just going to accept the defaults for all of these options right here. And then I'll type W to write the changes and make them permanent. And now, as you can see, I have a partition. Next, what I could do is format the volume. So for example, I'll format it as ext4. And then I'll type the device identifier for the partition that I just created. And then what I could do is create a new directory to mount it to. And then I'll mount the volume. And as you can see, we see the new volume there at the bottom. And I could use this just like any other storage volume because it is a storage volume. I can save whatever files or data I want to save on that volume. And anytime I want to, I can detach it from the instance that is attached to currently and then move it over to a different one. It's a great feature. Now, if you want to learn more about the specifics of formatting volumes, I do have a video on my channel that already covers that, and I'll leave a card for that video right about here. For now, let's go ahead and return to the Cloud Control Panel and check out some more features. Continuing, we have My Images right here. And here you'll see any images that you've created as part of your account. We'll see both backups and snapshots here. So here's the backup that I created earlier, as well as a snapshot. If you want to create a new one, you can click right here, and this will give you the option to upload an image to your account. So for example, if you wanted to export an image from something like Proxmox and import it here, you could certainly do that. Now this is something that I'll probably cover in a future video, but I just wanted to show you that you can create a new image from this particular section. But for the most part, you'll visit this section right here to view any images that you've added to your account. In addition, we also have API users, and this is where you could create API credentials for automation tools or custom scripts. And RamNode offers an OpenStack-style API, and that means you can interact with your cloud resources using command line tools, custom applications, Ansible, Terraform, and more. If you're into automation, this section is extremely useful, and is something that I might cover in a future deep dive. But anyway, moving on, we have the Object Store section, and this provides access to S3-compatible object storage. If you've ever used Amazon S3 or Backblaze B2, this will feel familiar. And object storage is different from volume storage. It's not a block device, but a simple way to store files and metadata. It's perfect for backups, static files, application assets, and long-term archival. Now, a full tutorial on object storage could easily be its own video, and is something that I'll probably explore in a follow-up. Finally, we have the Load Balancers section, And these allow you to distribute traffic across multiple VPS instances. For example, if your website or application experiences heavy load, you could create additional backend servers and assign them to a load balancer. And the load balancer will automatically spread incoming requests across the group, and that'll help your infrastructure scale smoothly as traffic increases. This is definitely an advanced feature, but it is great to know that the option is here if you ever need it. Now, before I close out the video, I'd like to point your attention to the billing section of the Cloud Control Panel. You see that right here. So I'll click on it, and here you can get some useful information regarding billing. And as you use any cloud provider, it's important that you keep an eye on costs. That way, you won't have any surprise charges. Within billing history, you can see your overall costs broken down by service, and you'll see costs for your instances, images, floating IPs, and so on. Now at this point, we don't have much within our account to show in this section right here, but as you use the solution, you'll no doubt explore more of RamNode's feature set, and you'll see all of your costs right here within this section. Again, you should definitely keep an eye on costs when it comes to a cloud account, and this one is no exception. And you'll see all the information that you need to know regarding billing right here. And there's our video. In this video, I gave you a full overview of RamNode. I showed you the process of creating an Ubuntu instance on the platform, and then I showed you around the Cloud Control Panel so that way you'll see what features RamNode has to offer. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if there's more content you want to see around RamNode, let me know in the comments down below what types of tutorials you'd like to see on the channel. And speaking of RamNode, I really appreciate their support of Learn Linux TV and working with me to produce this tutorial. It was a lot of fun to check out RamNode, and since I was planning on creating more content around cloud computing anyway, it was great to have a chance to check it out. If you want to check out RamNode for yourself, then consider using the coupon code LearnLinuxTV to help support the channel, and I would really appreciate it. And thank you so much for checking out today's video. I really appreciate it. And also be sure to subscribe to Learn Linux TV for the latest in Linux. I release new Linux-related content each and every week, and I'd love to have you aboard. And with that said, I'll see you in the next video.